I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show, to the DT Show. I'm Daniel, as always. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've been coming in pretty much almost every day now. This week for the last few days. It seems like you guys getting tired of me. If you guys are watching this on TikTok, I have not gone live on TikTok for the last couple of days. You know, one of them we had a guest, and another one we were presenting a lot of things, and I'm not able to do such on TikTok. So we haven't gone live, but we are live now on TikTok. So thank you for those that are tuning in, and thank you for those that are tuning in on the YouTube, the Twitch, X, Rumble, Facebook, wherever you're coming from. Like, subscribe, follow. The whole 9 yards. This way it tells the interwebs and the algorithms and all of those things that say, hey, you like the DT show, and they'll continue to send it to you. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation today. We have a few documents that were dropped, and we'll get into that first before we talk about everything else. Let's pull that up real fast first. And then after we talk about these documents, we're going to talk about, something that I've been aware of for a while. And something that, I hadn't had permission to clear up because it really didn't need to be cleared up until probably now. And that is what happened at the stalking incident at the WindCo Foods. I've talked to Kaylee's parents, initially got the report from Kaylee's mom, Christy, and she told me step by step of what had happened because she had a conversation with Kaylee about what happened during the time that it was occurring. And then also I spoke with Steve, and I had asked him if it was possible that I could, clear up what that situation was, because I felt like a lot of people were going to start looking at that incident, the stalking incident. I might try to correlate that as some sort of connection between Bryan Kohberger and the victims. I don't know if there is or not. I don't think that stalking incident that everybody's referring to does, though, and I've been saying that for some time, but we'll get into it. I'll actually give you guys the details about what had occurred, what she saw and who she was with, etc. So make sure you like and subscribe. But first, let's get into the new documents, and there's not a lot of them. There's only a few of them. We're not going to go into all of them. One of them is a motion to seal Exhibit A of the defendant's 7th motion to compel. It's not much. The defendant's 7th motion to compel discovery. and then the order sealing the defendant's seventh motion to compel. So those things are already just aren't anything. They're sealed. They're not going to say anything. So have no idea what they're about. Now there's two other ones. We'll go through the first one. And the first one is a defendant's motion for leave to file respondents to the state's amended expert disclosures. And so I'll read this real quick. This is it comes down. Bryan Kohberger through and his attorneys move the court from leave to the court sealed order governing federal criminal proceedings and notice of trial setting filed October 9, 2024. Defense counsel was asking for leave to file a response to the state's amended supplemental report or response to request for discovery regarding expert testimony. Mr. Kohberger requests leave to provide responses to the state's amended disclosure to extent the disclosure presents a new or changed expert opinion that his experts will address at trial. Mr. Kohberger requests leave to amend or file an additional motions in limine relating to these disclosures. Kohberger grounds these requests in his United States and Idaho constitutional rights of confrontation, of fair trial, effective assistance of counsel, and presenting a full defense. These disclosures were made 2 months after the state's expert disclosure deadline and over a month after the state had a benefit of Mr. Kohberger's disclosures. So these are probably rebuttal. Just stopping right there. I haven't read this. That's why you don't see any highlighted stuff yet. I'm going through this one for the first time. This sounds like this is going to be a deal where the prosecution has come up with rebuttal witnesses to go up against what it is that they think that the defense is going to come up with as far as how they plan on trying their case for Bryan Kohberger. And it seems like the defense wants those experts out. That's my read on it. That's my take. Further disclosures did not come until 2 weeks after the state's rebuttal expert disclosure. Mr. Kohberger notes that in March 3rd, 2025, the disclosure of one new disclosure is an expert report that makes changes to the original report. The report was dated February 13, 2025, in time for the state's rebuttal disclosure. For unexplained reasons, the expert reported and held on an additional 2 weeks before the disclosure. So yeah, this is definitely about a rebuttal witness who held on to, I guess, some reports for a couple of weeks. Let's see. And it says here, should the court require a hearing on this matter, counsel requests 30 minutes to present oral argument, evidence, and testimony in support of thereof. So interesting stuff there. You know, there's a expert that the defense is not too happy with, that the prosecution may be bringing on board. Interesting. Let's see. All right, so let's go to the next one that came out. This one, I don't know who it's for. Now let's read it first. This is a motion to modify no contact order. The state of Idaho, by and through Latell County prosecuting attorney, moves this court for modification to the no contact order previously filed herein, prohibiting the defendant from having any contact with the father of one of the victims. This motion is based on the fact that the father has requested the addition of his wife and stepdaughter to the no contact order. The state contacted the defendant's attorney, Ann Taylor, in this matter, and she does not have an objection to amending the no contact order to include the wife and the stepdaughter. Okay. So let's go through this. So this is a father of one of the victims who has a stepdaughter. I mean, could this be, I asked Steve if he was aware of any of this. He said he was not aware of it. So I doubt it's Steve. So then you have Ethan's, dad. I think you'd also have to consider the surviving victims as well, Bethany and Dylan. So you got Bethany, Dylan, Ethan, Xana, and Mogen. And out of those whose fathers have remarried and have a stepchild, it sounds like this person would probably be, I don't want to necessarily say an only child, but it doesn't add on a biological, daughter. So I'm not thinking Xana, because I think Jasmine, I think that would have been added on here as well. I think that crosses out Ethan as well. So this might be Madison's dad, or maybe Dylan's or Bethany's, one of the two. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they are surviving. But are Bethany and Dylan considered victims in this case? Probably not. I don't think so. So maybe this is Madison's dad, just kind of thinking out loud. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. But that's what it kind of sounds like to me. I'm not sure if Madison's dad is remarried and has a stepchild as well. Steph C says, I think it's DM because her stepmom is a lawyer. It's possible. It's possible. It's interesting. It is interesting. Since Dylan called her dad before calling 911, maybe him. That's an interesting thought there, Frenchie. Thank you for that. That's a possibility as well. That is a possibility. But the big question is are, to the eyes of the court, is Dylan considered a victim? And if I was an arresting officer in this case, would I mean, she's not listed in the charges here. That doesn't mean she's not a victim. But I don't think in this case scenario here that in the eyes of the law that she would be considered a victim. But it could very well be DM. Reread that. Yeah, it says here that the state of Idaho moves this court for modification. So this is already a no contact order already to begin with. There's already one established. But this is to modify that non-contact order, prohibiting the defendant from having contact with the father of one of the victims. I guess maybe this is like a contact of other people that is already there. So we already knew that he wasn't supposed to talk to some of the other persons. And so, so the father was added to this no contact order. And he has requested the addition of his wife and stepdaughter to the no contact order as well. Does the burglary charge still stand? The surviving roommates would be victims of the burglary. I would agree so, but they weren't read off as victims in the beginning when it came down to the charges. They're chat chick. When all the charges were read, and including the burglary charge, I don't recall Dylan and Bethany being read out as victims in this case, but they could be. They could be victims of a different case. Well, I mean, it's all the same criminal element, so it's a confusing one. That's true. Donna Shaw, that Emily and Hunter were significant others at the time. I don't know if they are anymore, but that is the document there. All right, now let's get into what everybody's here for. So let's talk about, is it possible that Bryan Kohberger met or cross paths with one or more of the victims at the WindCo Foods? Let's look at where the WindCo food place is first and foremost. Right here it is. I have it located in green. Let me just change this view real fast. And as I zoom out, you can kind of see where it is. This is Moscow, Idaho. Over here is Pullman, Washington. This is the line. It's pretty close to the state and city line, right? As far as going towards Pullman, Washington. So I wouldn't be surprised if this place is one of the more publicly used places for both Pullman and Moscow, as far as like their main place to go for groceries and things of that nature. But this is also the location where Bryan Kohberger was pulled over on August 21st, 2022 for a no seatbelt, and was given a citation for no seatbelt violation. When we go back to the documents here at the very bottom here of this document, which is it's a redacted state's motion in limine the self-authentication of records in reliance on IRE 803 and 8 IRE 902 and IRE 803-24. And so this is against the hearsay rule, the exceptions for the hearsay rule. So this isn't all the evidence, but this is evidence that per se isn't like firsthand knowledge, because it's hearsay, but that can that is significant, right? Like, for instance, there's surveillance video from a sunset mark, and there's a lot of surveillance videos. How is that not hearsay? You know what I'm saying? Well, I guess because this wasn't, and this is just my guess, but I'm assuming that because they didn't witness the crime itself, this is, they're witnessing other things that could be, how can I put it, circumstantial. Why? Because when we look at all of the surveillance camera footage that's in here, some of these we know is for the night of the incident, because they even say, like, for instance, the sunset video in Pullman, Washington, and in Moscow on November 13th. Those are surveillance footage from that night, but it's not of the murder scene, right? It's of different locations, and it's not specifically to the crime. What don't they have in here? The 1112 King Road surveillance isn't in here in this list of evidence. And so I think that's the reason why, is because that's closest to the home, and it's portraying a vehicle going in and out, and it's time stamping basically when they arrived and when they left. So it's not necessarily hearsay. It's first person because it's in that vicinity, and there's other corroborating evidence that specifies to that vehicle passing right before and right after the crime had been committed. But the rest of this stuff is like, all right, down the street or something else, but they still have something to do with the case. When I broke down when we broke this down here, I added some of the video that is in the PCA that's not in here. For instance, 700 Indian Hills Drive camera is not in this document. Neither is the King Road, 1112 King Road residence camera's not there, so I added that. But as you can see, these cameras aligned for a path that they suspect that Bryan Kohberger took. And at every location, based on the timing in which he left the last camera, he's populating at the right time that you would expect. And so if he's passing by the 700 Indian Hills Drive camera and he's about a minute away from the next camera, it's about a minute before he's popping out in the next camera, and so on and so on. And so you can kind of follow his path, yet these cameras are considered hearsay. So my assumption is because they're not actually taking video of him at the residence or leaving or entering the residence. This is him at other places, not at the residence, if that makes sense. So let's go back. We have the WindCo up here. This is where Bryan Kohberger had his traffic stop. And down here it says that they're looking at WindCo financials records for Bryan Kohberger, and also the financial records and surveillance video for Bethany, Dylan, Kaylee, Maddie, Xana. Not for Ethan, but for the rest of the victims that are in here. Now, this is the only place that I have seen where all of the victims and the suspect have their name in one place. A lot of people try to connect Bryan Kohberger to the Mad Greek. A lot of people try to connect Bryan Kohberger to a lot of different places, and they couldn't. The Corner Club came out saying he wasn't a Patreon there, and so many other places. So everybody's wondering, well, where did they meet? Where did they cross paths? They've had to have crossed paths somewhere. Could it have been there? Yeah, I think it's very well plausible. August 21st, that traffic stop, for whatever reason, is the one that the police and law enforcement are specifically going to use for this case. Now, is there a purchase from Bryan Kohberger and from one of the victims at the WindCo just shortly before that? And does that say something? Does that show you or tell you something like, hey, maybe he was following or surveilling them at one point? Now, I know that there was a stalking report that came out of this place, but like I've said multiple times, I don't think it has anything to do with what ended up would happen. But they were able to pull video from there because of how soon and close relation it was to the murders, and verify that the people involved weren't involved in the murders as well. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen another night or another day. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about that stalking details. So I went and pulled the transcript out real quick. I wish I could make it bigger for you guys. I wish I could make it bigger for myself because let me see if I can change the font real quick. And this is an interview that I had with Miss Goncalves. No, it's not. All right. Well, I'm just gonna have to read it like this. So this is an interview I had with Christy about a year and a half ago now, maybe even a little bit longer. It's an unreleased video. Nobody's seen it. In this interview, we spoke about a lot of things. And one of the things that I asked about was the night or the potential stalker report. And this is what she said. She said that was actually happened. And I'm going to read from the transcript. Some of it I'm going to put in my own words of certain things that was said that I did take out that she didn't want to be put out there for whatever reason. But I will still just kind of verify some things that was said. But for the most part, it's just going to read what she said to me. So she said that was actually happened almost a month before the murders, and it was a situation that happened at WindCo. And Kaylee called me freaking out. And actually, at the time, I had the time and date in my phone because I didn't answer my phone. Originally, she texted me was like, "This is important. You need to answer my phone and quit blowing me off." I answered my phone, and she was like, "It's a situation." She's like, "Mom, this guy." I went to this off checkout. I went in about because I went to the shop checkout. I was watching him, like I could see him and stuff, like in the glass reflection. And sorry about this a little bit. The transcript, it didn't pick it up correctly all the time. I'll be honest with you. When I was reading it back, there was a part that said some weird word, but the word she said was rear view, and it didn't pick it up right. So some of this isn't picked up right either. So I want to make sure I say it the correct way. He was in the glass reflection and stuff. And when I left, he did not buy anything. He just came right out behind me. I walked fast. He walked faster and walked faster, and he walked faster. And she goes, I got to the point where I was like, almost like just, really like almost running, walking fast without running, and she goes, and I opened up and she was with Bethany because she said I opened up my car and Bethany was underage. So she didn't, give me a second. And she goes, I opened up, and she was with Bethany, and opened up my car door, and Bethany was underage, so she didn't go in. She goes, and I literally threw the 12-pack like across to her through the driver's side and jumped in my car, locked my car door, and I looked, and I was like, she was on. I was like, where did he go? And she goes, I looked up in my rear view. I didn't see him. I looked on my side rear view mirror, and he was crouched by, she was in a Subaru Legacy 4-door, crouched by the back door, right? And I was like, oh gosh, because then I got the hell out of there. So she was like, what do I do? What do I do, Mom? What do I do? I'm like, because you think I should call the police. You think I shouldn't. I said, and then you pulled off. She goes, I pulled off and I watched him and he walked back into the store. And I said, you should probably call the police. She goes and said, well, I did what you do, like when she decided, she goes, and she described the man. And what she described was that the man was African-American. So this isn't Bryan Kohberger. He was an African-American man, and it was two of them. And none of the description matches what Dylan said. An African-American male who wasn't the same build as Bryan Kohberger or the person that Dylan saw or any of those things. And she goes on to say, you should call the police. Hold on. And I said, at least go walking and tell the store. And she did. I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. She wound up getting, and she didn't. She wound up not doing it. just and then when this happens, a month later, I was able to go to the police. How much she called me, and the time was literally living in the parking lot in that time, and she was left. They were able to find it and able to corroborate her story. And there was actually 2 guys there that night, and they were quote unquote picking up women. And they said that they were following them in the parking lot, trying to get their number and whatnot. I'm like, well, that's probably not the best way to pick up women and their number. Yeah, it's not it says expensive, but and I have to advise guys, there's like 2 people talking here. It's her and me. I think I said, yeah, it's not the best way or something like that. And it came out, that's not expensive. Expensive approach. I think I said that's not the best approach. And so did y'all have a talk with him and tell him this is probably isn't the best way to do it next time, but let them scare the blank out of her? Definitely scared the blank out of her. Yeah. But they couldn't find anything with Bryan Kohberger on that prospect. So I read everything about that scenario. It's a little confusing just because there's a lot of and yeah, but a lot of that also was it's 2 people talking back and forth, and it doesn't differentiate what happened. So basically, she told me that was the transcript. This is my interpretation of what she told me. She told me that Bethany and Kaylee went to the store. Bethany stayed inside the vehicle because Kaylee was going to go purchase probably alcohol, and Bethany was under the age of 21. Kaylee goes into the store and sees somebody following around. She notices this person in the rearview glass of the checkout line, that this person is behind her at certain points. She decides to, she checks out and she leaves. She's walking outside, and she continues to walk faster, noticing this guy's behind her. She walks faster, and the guy walks faster behind her. She walks very quickly, almost, very briskly, almost at a not running, but she describes it almost running, and that the man was still behind her. She jumped into her Subaru Legacy and threw the 12-pack across to Bethany, and looked back in the rearview mirror and in other mirrors. And this is about the same time that she's calling and texting her mom. And then she does notice the man crouching behind her. When I spoke with Christine, I think I actually talked to her another time. I need to go and look for that second interview. Well, in fact, I do know I talked to her a second time. I just don't know if it's in that second interview or not, if it was just maybe perhaps just talking to her about it. But I do recall asking about where the guy was crouched. And it sounds like it was like a car behind her car. Like, how there's like aisles of cars and stuff like that. And so, she said the guy was crouching, and she pulled out and left. And I don't think the guy was crouching directly right behind her car, because if she backed out and pulled out, she probably would have hit him, unless, and this is probably something I should have asked, is there room to go forward? But she left. The guy got up and walked back into the store. This happened within a month of the murder. So she being Christy and Steve were able to notify law enforcement. That notification was able to go in and verify and corroborate Kaylee's story, because they were able to pull the surveillance because it was within a month, and they were able to clear those individuals. So this stalking incident that everybody's been referring to has nothing to do with this case. Those guys have been cleared. They were looking for, they're trying to pick up women, and they're going to try to ask for her number. I guess she's just walking too fast for them to get in contact with her. But they cleared them about their whereabouts, and they do not match any description whatsoever of Bryan Kohberger or of the person that Dylan saw in that house that night. And so I've been telling you guys, I told you guys a long time ago about that whole stalker thing. I was like, look, I know a little bit about it, and what I do know is that the description of those persons does not match the description of the person that Dylan saw in that house. As vague as it is, it does not match. And so, hello, Kimberly, why invites me to co-host? I can't just because I have this going also on YouTube and everywhere else, or not, I would. But maybe next time I'll do one that's just strictly on the TikTok to get more people in that direction. But thank you. Email me, maybe we can work on something. But like, yeah. So as I said, they mentioned the description, and I was like, that's not the guy. I mean, that's not the guy that Dylan saw. I'm not even sure how much of that story Dylan knew about as far as the stalker stuff goes. For her to, come up with the story that she had came up with. A lot of people were thinking that maybe perhaps she wasn't being, I know that the defense is trying to say that there was some pictures there of some eyebrows and things of that nature, and that's maybe where she was getting these eyebrow things from. But well, let's look at what those pictures were. Let's look at those eyebrows. We have a picture of them here. I'll say thanks to my members in the Discord, because they're the ones that really, really, came up with this picture. But this is a picture here from inside of Dylan's room, and where you can see the eyebrows in the background. There's one picture there. There's an eye behind that one. These are your eyebrows. There's some heads. There's an eyebrow right here with an eye. I don't think any of these people, these are like ladies and lady eyebrows. These pictures are drawings from Dylan. These Kohbergers are, and for those that are on the TikTok that don't see the pictures, there is like a drawing is a woman with long hair, and this is probably could characterize as a maybe a child's drawing. It's not something that you would expect that you would say, oh, that's a professional drawer. There's a picture of looks like a cartoon style. Oh man, wrong one. Cartoon style eyes. There's pictures of somebody looking up, and another picture of an eyebrow that was drawn in. These are female eyebrows. I wouldn't be surprised if these are like eyebrows that she likes or something of that nature. Maybe she's made and tried to do for herself. But it's just not. It's nothing. It's nothing there, guys. Those aren't bushy eyebrows either. Yeah, I wouldn't consider them bushy. I mean, this one might be considered full. The one down here. I wouldn't say either of them are bushy. These all look like manicured eyebrows. You know what I mean? Exactly. Shelby goes FFS. She's probably just into makeup and drawing different looks. 100%. 100%. That's all it is. All it is. But these are the pictures that she was referring to, Ann Taylor, that is. Let's see. She was probably an art major. She could have been an art major, Melissa, coming in on TikTok. Let me see. Can I flip this around and show you guys? I don't know if I can flip the camera around. I wish I could. Even if I could, it's probably going to show my back green screen. Even though it's a green screen behind me, it'll be that, but it'll show you that screen that I have there instead of actually that. Definitely not what I expected. Yeah, definitely not. Didn't he follow a classmate to her car? That's what I heard. I heard too that may have been something. So it's interesting. However, the description of the persons that were there, that were walking behind Kaylee and kind of walked fast towards her, wasn't one that matches Bryan Kohberger's description. Let's see. The detectives is the one that made a comment, and AT just restated about the bushy eyebrow stuff, that there was bushy eyebrows on the wall. I'm not sure. I don't remember that. I just remember that Ann Taylor was really pointing it out, that there was a lot of bushy eyebrows and prominent eyebrows and all these other things that were already there on her wall. Well, we got to look at what that is. And it's not anything nefarious. Like some folks say, that's not what I was thinking. I think a lot of people were thinking maybe just drawings of random eyes all over the place. And that's not the case. You have pictures of somebody looking up, somebody looking straight, just an eye. a back of some sort, but nothing nefarious. I mean, these are just art pictures. Let's see. Well, yeah, I mean, that's all I got, guys. And you guys got some questions for me, throw them out this way. She could have been doing cosmetology too. Yeah, I think that may have been the case as well. The cosmetology aspect, I think that's probably more so. You know, I brought this up last time when we spoke about it. I was like, is it because of the whole cosmetology thing? Let me see if we can try to do this real quick. I don't know if you guys can see it there or not, or if it's just showing. Yep, it's just showing green screen. I turned it around though. But check us out on YouTube. We're live right now. It's on there on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, search DT Show or Drunk Turkey Show, and you guys will be able to see it. Daniel, what are your thoughts on why DM would have texted the Uber driver EC? I don't know. I don't know. It was at 2 something in the morning, right? At least that's what it appears to be. 2:10 in the morning. Are you driving? I mean, drunk girl in college asking what you're doing at 2 in the morning. I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating there. Let's see. I know you have a YouTube problem what's that? When I start recognizing people from other pages. What do I think, Daniel? What do you think Bryan's motive was? Well, according to what we've read and seen, it appears that the K-bar knife was purchased and sent to his home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. If that ends up being the case, and that knife was purchased before he moved to Moscow, unless obviously he shipped it to his parents' house, then he asked his dad to ship it to him, maybe to avoid, if somebody was searching for a K-bar knife or knives that were sent to the area, maybe that avoids it. Maybe that's why they were looking at UPS truck surveillance videos. Remember that was a thing that they were looking at the mailbag and UPS and FedEx surveillance videos of their drop-offs and things like that. Perhaps that has something to do with that. But Dateline, I think, is who had reported that information. They reported it in April 2022. So their report of him purchasing the knife that early says a lot to me. And I don't believe in coincidences. And that was around the same time he was having conversations about him potentially being hired on with Pullman Police Department for their intern police position. There was an email chain that was going back and forth in April of 2022 between Bryan Kohberger. I think it was Gary something, Chief Gary Jenkins, maybe, from the Pullman Police Department, referencing that Bryan Kohberger's application, and I guess their meeting, referencing him becoming an intern police officer. Now, the PCA says that he wrote a essay in the fall, and that he was trying to be a intern police officer at Pullman Police Department in the fall, and that his essay in the fall is what read that whole technological stuff. So that tells me he didn't get the job in the spring. And did he, or was he notified around April 2022? And if he was notified that he wasn't going to get the job, how does that play when it comes to him purchasing the knife then? I mean, does that say that he, had this idea? I mean, what was also going on at that time? He was writing his thesis, right? Now, do y'all know what his thesis was on? It was on that Reddit report that he was doing, where he was talking to ex-cons about their violent crimes and their feelings and how they picked their victims, how they made entry, how they got caught, those type of things. Which I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that he had a conversation with somebody who said that he got caught because his DNA was left on the doorknob on the inside of the house, meaning that when he was leaving, he had to open the door, and that's what caught him. Well, that might be a reason why Bryan Kohberger only opened the door and never touched it again. I've been saying this from the beginning, since day one, that Bryan Kohberger walked into that house and only opened the door once and didn't do it again. and that the main reason behind that was because to close it and then reopen it again would have to touch it 2 more times, and each time you touch that door is a possibility for DNA to get onto that door, whether he's wearing gloves or not. I mean, he could have had a moment where he scratched his nose if his nose was, exposed, or even his eye. We know that Dylan saw eyebrows. So if he goes in there and scratches his eye, and then as he's walking out, he touches the door, and he pushes a sliding door, and then, well, now that has just been transferred there. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of his Reddit friends told him something about that being the way he got caught. And now you see that. Now, if that ends up being the case, I think that's a pretty big indication of showing the possibility that this man committed this crime. If there are things that were said to him throughout his Reddit conversation that end up showing up in this case, that would be huge. That would be huge. Something of that nature, like, I got caught like this, and then, hey, well, this guy only touched the door. So what are the chances that happens, that he's talking about the scenario with an ex-con, and now we're seeing those things transfer over onto this crime scene? I think that's some circumstantial evidence that deserves more looking into, but that's what he was doing at the time in April of 2022. So a guy who, after the murders, his defense team goes and gets a psychologist, psychiatrist, or legal expert in the field of psychology to go and evaluate him and diagnose him with autism. And they say that in his autism diagnosis, that he falls under the realm of being unable to reciprocate feelings and things of that nature, things that we've already heard about, that he lacked remorse and lacked the feeling for other people. He called his father a sack of meat, and everybody else around him, including himself. He says that he knows he's an a-hole, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care about other people's feelings. This is when he was young. Well, apparently that's still transitioning. That's not just transitioning during the time of the crime, but it's still currently transitioning because he's been diagnosed by his own defense team after the fact. Now, granted, they're trying to get in front of the psychopath and sociopath terminology, which is what we've seen in their documentation. They don't want people to call him that because of how it's perceived and how it's going to make their client look. And I mean, if you're sitting there and you have a witness talking about bushy eyebrows, you have a diagnosis that says that this guy doesn't feel anything, doesn't care, cannot, has no remorse. And then you also find out that a vehicle matching his is seen outside of that house during this specifically odd hour of the night on a cold, cloudy night, right? Cold, cloudy, freezing night, overcast. There's a car without a front license plate that matches Bryan Kohberger's car, this odd hour night car out there. Now, this isn't, San Antonio, Austin, or Dallas. This is Moscow, Idaho, a small community. And so fewer cars are going to be out and about versus what you would expect in a big, larger city. And in this small town during this odd hour, there's this white car that matches his, which he alone admits that he was out and about during that specifically odd hour by himself and nobody else with him. And during this time, his phone is not reporting to the network. There's no sign of where he's at. There's no proof of where he's at. But there's this white car that matches his, and the person inside that car has Bryan Kohberger's DNA on their person. And that DNA ends up, on a murder weapon, or on a item that holds the murder weapon that finds out underneath the body of a victim. The jury's going to look at all those things. And when you hear sociopath and psychopath, and you start thinking about things like, what do I think the motive was? Well, it starts to make things a lot clearer once you understand those things alone of what this motive was. In my opinion, you listen to the audio from 50 feet away, or the description of the audio, you read it. There's no signs of rage. There's no signs of somebody going crazy and yelling, how could you do this to me? How are you leaving me? How could you embarrass me? There's no sounds of somebody drunk and raged on roids who was willing to fight somebody in front of all of the Sigma Pi, fraternity at a party, allegedly. I don't even know if that is true, but those that believe that to be true say that they point to this supposed near fight that nearly happened at the Signakai party. You have a guy who didn't care then, but yet hours later is carefully driving around 4 times before he stops, walks in drunk and intoxicated and on roid rage, but has the thought not to touch the door after opening it once. Because at the end of the day, somebody committed this murder, right? And we can tell that the door remained open the entire time because of Murphy. Murphy ran downstairs and was barking outside at the same time that the intruder was committing the crime, committing the crime of murder with Xana and Ethan in Xana's room, because you can hear the struggle happening at the same time. And so we know that that person went after Xana. If Murphy got outside, that back glass door had to have been open. We know it was open when everybody arrived as well. So you have, for somebody to know that and keep that in mind, that's not consistent with somebody who's roid raging or raging out of control because they're love struck. None of those things fall in that line. So what was the motive? The motive was, when you find out this guy doesn't have feelings and he's talking to other people and about their emotions and feelings during the commission of the crime, it's probably that he was trying to feel the same thing. That's just my opinion. Let's see. One of my sisters does eyebrows. She's a pro. I'm curious, Paula, the sister that does eyebrows, does she have pictures of eyebrows on her room? What about the rest of her room? What about the rest of her room? There's a bed, pillow, and you can't see it from in here or from this picture. That's funny. Steph thinks that BK's motive was SA, but the crime didn't go as planned. Yeah, I mean, I think that this crime probably was motivated that way. Doesn't, just because there wasn't any sign of an assault, a sexual one, doesn't mean that it wasn't motivated in that manner. And I clearly think that there probably was some sort of motivation of gratification in that manner in this case. 100%. TikTok and DoorDash were fake to throw the timeline. What about the phone downloads too, or the video of the vehicle driving in and out, and the dog barking, and everything else that happened in between there? But to say they were fake, I mean, that's also implying that there's a lot of things that were faked. I mean, grow up. I'm sorry. I don't have time for the oh my God, the police, they framed this random guy from the town next over who was a PhD student, and they did it for some random reason that nobody knows, that doesn't make any sense. And they had all these agencies protecting them because nobody, the FBI, the Idaho State Police, the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Police Departments that assisted in this case as well, they all just turned a bad eye to some crooked cops doing some crooked things. It's like, if that's honestly your defense, if your defense is I'm being framed, like yeah, okay, come on now. Now I do understand that there are times where things get that are gotten wrong. I mean, there may have been times where people gotten framed, but that's been few and far in between, especially in the more modern era. Like something that happened 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer than that, definitely longer than that. 100%. Yeah, you can see some things, but for the most part, if something is wrong, like people do get things wrong where they look at some evidence and they follow the wrong lead. But to frame somebody and law enforcement to go out of their way and plant evidence and all this other stuff, and it become a high profile case, or a case that's picked up and looked at by multiple agencies, and you have databases like CODIS that is monitored and by multiple agencies across the nation, and you come up with this fantasy that you think that somehow this small town cop somewhere got away with all of that, was able to trick everybody and Now, Bryan Kohberger is the guy that's to blame. Is ridiculous. I mean, if you have to go that far, you don't have the strongest case. You're already losing. Now, can police get things wrong? 100%. You know, can they look at something and say, all right, I think this is what perceives me out of this evidence. Let's look at the Ron Logan stuff in Delphi. You know, them looking at Ron Logan wasn't because they wanted to put Ron Logan away for the rest of his life because he's a bad dude and they don't care for him and all these other things. No, it's because their perception of the evidence made them believe that at that time. And I don't fault them for that. You know, a lot of people who come up with an alibi before the bodies are found or a crime is discovered is pretty suspicious, right? But obviously he was hiding a different type of crime, one that involved him drinking and being, violating his probation or parole for consuming alcohol and things of that, and driving as well. So, there is the you can perceive evidence wrong, but to go out of your way and plant stuff like that in today's age, I mean, good luck. You know, could it happen? Yeah, but most likely you're going to get caught. Law enforcement, especially if it gets picked up. The only way it doesn't happen is if it doesn't become a huge thing. It goes under the rug. Multiple agencies aren't getting involved. Those type of things are the way you're trying to make that happen. Like, for instance, in the Karen Reed case, like if that was actually a frame job and these are police officers, you're not going to go and pin and arrest somebody. You're going to say it was a hit and run. Somebody did hit him, but we don't know who. We're going to close everything. You're not going to see the autopsy pictures of his arm. You're not going to see any of those things about him. You're not going to see the videos of or the pictures of the scene. You're not going to see the videos or anything of the bars that he was at or any of those things. That's going to be all closed because the case will never be closed. And you leave it open that way for it never to be closed, and it becomes a cold case. You don't go and blame somebody and close a case so that way all the evidence and everything can become public and you can be scrutinized. It doesn't make any sense. Not at all once a bit. And once it becomes a high profile case and once agencies start looking into it, if something shady was done, you're going to get caught. So the only way is to make sure that it doesn't. And again, if you go and make an arrest or a wild arrest or accusation, then it's going to draw attention. You know, if it's this guy got hit, left in the snow, and we have no idea who it is, not the plow guy, it's not Karen Reed, it's going to remain open. And, you know, that story of somebody beating him up and all this other stuff, that fake story doesn't come out or any of those things, you know, because Karen Reed doesn't get arrested and nobody knows about any of those things, and it goes away forever. So, you know, there's more than one way to do things, and to go into something and think that this entire Mission Impossible plan, especially like in the Bryan Kohberger case, to think that, all right, when did they decide that there was going to be a frame job? Most of them say, oh, it was towards the end of the semester because the new semester was coming. They needed a name. People weren't going to be going to Idaho and they were going to lose a lot of money. All right. Well, by that time, they had found his DNA on the knife sheath and submitted into CODIS. So were they like, all right, what did they do? Did they go into CODIS and resubmit it and fool everybody? Like, and nobody noticed it? Not one person, not one agency, nothing was noticed as far as the DNA sequence in CODIS. Even Judge Hippler was like, are you trying to say that they changed the CODIS? And they were like, no, and this and that and a third. But in order for this to be a frame job, that has to have happened because they collected that evidence and put it in there. You know, but by, I think it was December 10th, Othram had already gone through everything and couldn't figure out who a suspect was. They had pinpointed 4 brothers and they wanted more information. They wanted more DNA. So they wanted law enforcement to go collect DNA from these guys, which is probably that secret DNA that was collected. Remember, there was some secret DNA from a cigarette butt that was surreptitiously collected that Ann Taylor was like, we want to know more about it. But she's been harping and hyping about the IgG for so long. It probably had to do with those 4 brothers. And that was probably one of those 4 brothers that they were trying to look into. But by that point, the FBI is like, shoot, we'll just look at where we're not supposed to. and we'll get the information one way or another. And so they took over on December 10th. How long do you think Othram had that information? I mean, December 10th, that's less than a month from when the incident occurred on November the 13th. So they had it for about 3 weeks before FBI was like, screw that, we're going to take over and do it. Well, how long was Othram able to do what they were doing? I mean, it had to have been a few weeks, at least 2. So when was that STR profile created? And when, if that STR profile was created November 21st or something, within a week, I mean, is that really all it took? Is that all they gave law enforcement, a week to make an arrest before the University of Idaho pulled their weight and said, this has gone too long. We need to find somebody. And within that week, they were able to pin Bryan Kohberger and say, all right, well, we need to get DNA from somewhere. Let's get his. And all right, now we got his. Now let's wait an additional 5 weeks for everything to go through. I mean, it's just ridiculous no matter which area or which direction you look at when you're trying to say that Bryan Kohberger was framed for this. He wasn't. It's his DNA, it's his car, it's his phone that's off. I mean, everybody says, well, you know, he took his phone. He took his car. He purchased the K-bar knife off of his profile on Amazon with his credit card per the defense. And it was sent to his house. He made so many dumb mistakes, yet you guys are so surprised he got caught. I think that's the dumb thing that I can't fathom is how many mistakes he made that so many people that categorize as stupid. And yet there are these people that think I wonder how he got caught. Amazing. I mean, it makes no sense. Does it? Does it really not make sense? Or does it make perfect sense? And you're just out of this world crazy. Let's see. When I typed EC Uber meaning, it was sent to eliminated cost. What's up, Steve? How's it going, my man? Hope you're doing well. Maybe they meant EG for Eric Grower. He was an Uber driver, private driver, but I'm not sure who EC is or why it's in there. Maybe EC dropped her off and she was like, hey, are you still driving? Because she did get dropped off like at 1:13 or something. It doesn't say what was said also before and after, which would lead me to believe that what was said before or after, especially beforehand, came from Dylan, which wasn't hearsay. So which is, well, no, the are you still driving is from her. I'm not sure. Thank you, Corporal. It was actually the mods there. It was either Deb or Chloe. Maybe it was someone else. I got to go back and look. But one of our mods actually, and one of our members found it, and they sent it to me. I said, thank you, and I'm using it. Do they know for sure BK bought the knife? I mean, they got the receipt, and they got the verification that it was delivered, and they can't find it. I don't know. I'm pretty positive they got it for sure that he bought the knife. Do you think BK had ever approached the 1122 on foot before the crime? Tried the slider knowing it was never locked. Ooh. Let's see. Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, I couldn't tell you yes or no. I know that he was in the area 12 times, but if he was checking on the house like that and maybe perhaps even doing a dry run, I don't think he'd have his phone on. You know, a lot of people tell me, it's like, hey, do you think one of those 12 times was him trying to, actually commit the crime? And my answer has always been no, because if that was the case, then the phone would have been off beforehand. So it's possible. I'd like to look at his phone records to see how many times his phone went off. I think that's going to tell a lot. The door had to be open so he could take MM out with him. It just didn't go as planned. Is the other reason the door was left open? That's possible. That is possible. I just think that you're probably leaving that door open more so you don't had to touch it and leave prints or DNA. Because, I mean, let's think about it. He would have known, like if somebody would have said, like if I had access to some ex-cons and I was planning a plan and I was asking people, how did you get caught? And somebody told me, oh man, they got my DNA from inside of the house. It was the doorknob on inside. That's going to tell me, all right, well, they didn't get it from outside. That means that he must have obviously done something inside the house to exert himself. And either when he was running to the door and stopped, made that sudden stop to open it, DNA flung off of this person, or as they touched that item, either they touched something of themselves, or they sweat dropped down, or a piece of skin got exposed, or something happened during maybe even a scuffle or something, that when they touched that doorknob or the door handle to get out of the house, they left DNA behind. And so if somebody tells you that, I mean, you're just going to say, all right, well, I'm not going to touch the door when I go in and out. And these Reddit stuff and him purchasing the knife tells me that, you know, this is probably around the time he started this plan. And this was before he moved to the Moscow area. So I think he just had this in his mind and planned that this is where it was going to go. Let's see. Thank you so much, Enduring. It says, you do a great service to society. You give us all great insight into the psychology and law enforcement. Observing you helps us remain cautious. Cheers. Cheers to you as well. Paula says that BK is trying to use his use autism for his psychotic ways. I think he's trying to use autism so that the term psychotic, psychosis, or what was it? Sociopath and psychopath aren't terms that are used against them. You know, they've actually gone in there and wanted to borrow those terms. And so that helped me also realize that connection there. He must have either watched that house for a while or snuck in there before, because he knew where to go and when he got in and out. It's possible. I mean, that's the reason why I think a lot of people think that Maddie was the victim here, right? I mean, the target here, mainly because Maddie's room was the one closest to the road. And if you did park in the back area of the parking area, and you were to surveil or watch the house, you'd be looking into Madison's room. And so it's possible that they could have gone in and surveilled and did all those other things. I think he must have as well. But the fact that he walked past Dylan's room multiple times, and let's remember the location of that room. That room was located right next to the staircase and right adjacent to the kitchen. And I would have thought that maybe perhaps it could have been a pantry or a closet. You know, if he's not touching things more often than he has to, so he doesn't leave DNA behind, like the back sliding glass door, is he going to check a closet or a pantry door if that's what he thinks it is? I do know that there's a moment where it says that he sees Dylan open the door, and there's like maybe perhaps some eye contact there. I don't know if perhaps maybe he did see, maybe he didn't. The direction that he was walking to go that way, he would have passed by directly in front of that good vibe sign that was lit up. You know, how much would he have been able to see in that dark area? I don't know. Steve from True Crime Web is here, and he's done some video, and I'd bring it up, but I'll do that next time just because we're already over an hour now. But he's had some video that we've shared on the show, and he's a former CSI. He had a dark area, dark lit room. He got a mannequin, dressed the mannequin up in a description similar to what Dylan said that she saw that night, and he made a little setup of a mock area that was similar to the home, right? He built fake walls, put a good vibe sign or some neon lights in one area, and he rolled the mannequin around to see how visible this person was in certain different light. And if you're Bryan Kohberger looking that direction, it's hard to see, you know, based off of that video. And so I don't even know if he saw her. He may have been looking that direction, but he may not have been able to see through the darkness. Plus, he had that snow stuff. I'm not sure. Autistic people would most closely be identified as asexual, not incel. I don't know that, John. Laurie comes in with that comment. I have no idea. Let's see. We have Artworks, but has been a member for 9 months. Thank you so much, Artworks. Too. We have Shelley Stewart's coming in with a $7.99 sticker. $7.99 super chat saying, Daniel, you said it ages ago. Kohberger is not important enough to frame. That's true. Like, how do they even know who he is? Yeah, I had one person come in and literally tell me that after Bryan Kohberger applied for the Moscow Police Department, him and Payne had a couple of beers, and that's how they got Bryan Kohberger's DNA. My first response was Bryan Kohberger applied for the Pullman Police Department, not Moscow. And just to think of also that they had some beers after the fact, it's just kind of stupid and silly, to be honest with you. Like to think, oh, yeah, we're going to have beers with this guy. We're going to frame him for this murder we're going to commit. At a certain point, it's literally gotten to the point where the Kohbergers feel that the real victim in this case is Bryan Kohberger, and that the victims were collateral damage because the police were trying to ruin Bryan Kohberger's life. I mean, that's literally what they think. It's ridiculous. Cian comes in with a $10 super chat. Thank you again. I still think KG wasn't sleeping with MM. My biggest question was KG under or over the bed blanket. I still think she caught him attacking MM. And then Xana Kernodle got in the way. Then Ethan Chapin. What do you think? I think that they definitely were in the same bed, based on the description. Where Kaylee ended up at, which is in the corner of the bed, it would have been really for her to end up there after Bryan Kohberger started attacking Madison Mogen. She would have had to have gone over Maddie and Bryan Kohberger, under or over Bryan Kohberger as well, to get to the corner if he was attacking her at that moment when she walked in, if she walked in on him. I strongly suspect that they were in the same room. I even told Blue and Hyman this before Steve broke that. I wish I would have put it out there, but I didn't, as far as it being something that is documented. But early on, I told the guys multiple times, I was like, I'm fairly positive these girls were sleeping in the same room, and that's why they got caught together up at the top. Fairly positive. And the only thing that I had to make me believe that was the fact that there were so many phone calls late at night that night to the boyfriend from both phones. These were girls that have known each other for a very, very long time. They thought of each other as sisters and have probably had multiple sleepovers growing up, and was not something that was uncommon, in my opinion. And, turned out to be true. Turned out to be absolutely true. But I felt that in order for this person to have gone in like the manner that he did, it made more sense that he had attacked both of them in the same bed in the same room, which also makes sense as to why the injuries don't match. Remember, Steve mentioned that early on. The reason the injuries don't match, and I haven't gotten this directly from Steve, this is just my opinion. I've not asked Steve about the injuries. I've not asked Steve or Christy nor any of the other family members of the other victims who have contacted me that I've talked to. I've not asked them about the injuries of their children. That is not for my place. I would never want anybody to ask me to relive something like that, to rethink of a moment where I saw a loved one of mine in that condition. So I've never asked them this. But when he came out and said the injuries don't match, my initial thought was, all right, well, if they're in the same room, in the same bedroom, and the goal was to be covert, right, to be quiet and things of that nature. You're going to walk into a bedroom, you're going to see two people in the same bed. This is a couple of hours after they've fallen asleep and have been heavily intoxicated, so they're in the deepest part of their sleep. You walk in, the first person that you attack is probably going to be the easiest person to get to, which is why I wouldn't be so surprised if the DNA under Maddie's fingernails don't come back to Bryan Kohberger's. She's the least person that I would have expected for DNA to be found under her fingernails if she's the first person that was attacked. She would have been attacked by surprise more so than any of the other victims. So I just wanted to throw that out right now. Regardless of who committed this crime, whether you think Bryan Kohberger did it or if it was somebody else, it is based on the fact that the injuries don't match. The first person that you probably have access to is Madison. You know, she's going to wake up, perhaps maybe even Kaylee's going to wake up, or Kaylee's going to wake up through that process. Well, then you have to silence her before she screams and alerts everybody else in the house. And so you don't have the luxury, if you are the assailant, to precisely pinpoint where your first hit is going to be, like you do with Madison, whereas she's asleep and unconscious and, you know, completely by surprise. And so you're going to have to act faster, quicker, with more ferocity. So that's the reason why that those things are described differently. And I think that, you know, you end up in that position, you end up with the injuries described as such only by being in there and being the second person being attacked. I think that if it was Kaylee on the outside and Maddie on the inside, we'd probably seen it similar the other way around, where Kaylee would have had less than what Maddie did, you know. So I don't think it would have made a difference of who was on which side at that point. All right, I'm just going to go through a few more of these. So if you want yours added on here, hit a couple of stars. I'm not going to answer all the couple stars, but I am going to answer all the super chats. So if we can get all the super chats in, that'll be great. I'm going to star everything I see with stars and go through them as fast as I possibly can. So I'm already a little bit over, and I'm sure you guys are tired of seeing me at the seeing me at this point. Was it's like 3 or 4 shows in a row that we have done. So I'm just kind of starring everything real quick so I get to the very end. That's the one here. And if I miss your star question, I apologize. It's not that I am purposefully missing them. I'm just going through this as fast as I possibly can to star everything that I am seeing so I can come back through here. I want to say thank you, Princess Ella, for being the newest member. Appreciate you. The Mind Behind True Crime with Dr. Vona. That's an awesome name there. You're more likely to be a victim than a perp with autism. Great shows. Sirius Black is awesome. You're lucky to have her. Thank you. Yes, she definitely is. Let's see. You're more likely to be a victim than a perp with autism. No, I understand that, but the spectrum that he's under with the lack of remorse, lack of all these other things, and then you look at his history of being fired at every job that he's had and being kicked out of high school, the law enforcement class, and then having to take his final senior year online. A lot of people don't know that whole incident that happened in that law enforcement class happened his junior year. He got kicked out of there and put into the HVAC class where there was no females, and he didn't even finish that year. He ended up finishing that year online, and then the complete senior year was done online. Then he goes out to Northampton, I believe, next, where there are some issues there at Northampton University throughout the time he's there. Then he goes to DeSales. Throughout the time he's at DeSales University is when COVID's happening. And so, you know, he's now doing courses online where he's now able to excel, where he's not in front of other people, where he's not surrounded by people. He's excelling at DeSales University. I'm not aware of problems. That doesn't mean problems didn't happen, but I'm not aware of them there at DeSales. But then he moves across the country, and he is on his own for the very, very first time. You know, a lot of people ask, like, well, why didn't he do it before? Well, up until this point, he lived with mommy and daddy his entire life. His entire 28 years of existence, he was living with mommy and daddy. And the first time that he's on his own, he gets fired from a TSA job, one that he worked so hard to get, you know, to be in that position. He's having problems very early on in that TSA job. I mean, issues, a behavior plan is put up within a couple of months. And within the first semester, he's kicked out. He's fired. I mean, that's an extensive amount of work you have to do in a negative manner to get kicked out and have those many issues right away. I mean, he's on his own for the first time. And before he's even on his own for the first time, he's buying things like a K-bar knife and planning things, in my opinion. I mean, from the time that he moved there in June to November, I mean, 5 months, he's committed a quadruple homicide. Could you imagine if this man had been on his own for the last 10 years prior to that? The destruction he probably could have made or done. It's insane. But the autism spectrum disorder thing is a cover for them, the defense not wanting to call him a sociopath or a psychopath, which I'll tell you this, I guarantee you that when it's a sociopath and psychopath, you're more likely to be a perp than a victim with that one. But and let me know in that situation. Are you more likely to be a perp than a victim if you're a sociopath or a psychopath? So that's a real question, right? Because that's the other thing. I mean, when you look at what his diagnosis is and the feelings and the lack thereof, or the lack thereof reciprocation, that's the problem, right? And that's the problem that he's had for some time. I mean, I do know that he went to some classes at DeSales, but for the most part, I mean, 2020 was when COVID happened. So that entire year was online. The following year, majority of it was online. Some of it was back in the classroom. So yeah, he did go to class at DeSales. He also had to drive back and forth home, and that wasn't a short trip. And so perhaps maybe there obviously was some classes there, but for the most part, it was online, including the one that where the professor who recommended him to the PhD program, she said she never met him. That all the classes there were online. But thank you for clarifying that truth. I do know that he did go. It's just wasn't very much. All right, let's go back and look at some of these that I saved. Don't you know that DM did the whole crime and faked the whole text message? A pro burger told me. That's funny. That's funny. You remind me a lot of somebody, Corporal, but that's funny. Let's see. The sheath being under Maddie proves he initially forced her out of the bed. KG woke up. Plans changed. I mean, it's possible. I think he may have just kind of put it there, and then in the scuffle. And let's think about this, right? So if Kaylee wakes up and she's backing herself up in the corner, she's probably, let me remove this real quick. I don't know if you can see me well, but she's probably oh gosh, let me move this up. Scooting herself back, right? She's pushing herself back. And so if he's climbing over somebody and climbing and having to climb the bed to reach her, then a lot of those the covers and everything else is going to push downward on top of the knife sheath. So is it possible that that's how it happened? Maybe. I think otherwise. I wonder what information BF had said to the defense that wanted to talk to her about. No mention of her seeing anyone outside her window in these text messages. That's true. That is true. There is none there. But if she saw somebody outside of the window, I think that wouldn't be under the hearsay rule, right? Because that's her seeing somebody directly. But yeah, it doesn't allude to her seeing somebody either, because she's trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? She's trying to comfort Dylan by saying that Xana was also wearing all black. My opinion, Dylan probably told her she saw somebody wearing all black, and she's saying, well, Xana was wearing all black, and, as trying to come up with an explanation to what she had seen. So had she seen somebody naked outside, I don't think that would have been the way it would have gone down. She's like, yeah, I saw somebody outside too. That's not the thing. Thank you, Kathy. Paula comes in saying, quick question. Do you think BK knew BF was downstairs? And do you think he saw DM? I don't think he saw her. I don't think he saw her. And I don't think he knew I don't know if he knew Bethany was downstairs or not. I'm sure he knew there was a downstairs. But I don't know. I don't know if he knew who all was downstairs or not. Let's see. I agree. There could be multiple reasons why he left the door open. How do you think DNA got into Mandy's nails? I'm not saying our friends or association DNA, but BK's if it's under there. Well, here's the thing. I mean, the BK wants it thrown out, right? And if it excludes him and it's exculpatory, why do you want it thrown out? Don't you want to be able to say that in court? Say, hey, there's this. It's exculpatory to my client. She has DNA from somebody else under her nails. Now, they know that there are three DNAs under her nails, and they likely believe one of them is hers. The other one is probably somebody that was in the bed with her that night. So Kaylee. So there are two. The third one they want thrown out, and they have it blacked out as to how close how close Bryan Kohberger comes to being a match. They don't want us to know that for a reason. Could it be his? I don't know. Could it not be? I'm not sure. How could it have got under somebody else's? I mean, multiple ways. I mean, there's that dude that, and I know once I say it, people are gonna be like, "Oh, that's how Bryan Kohberger's DNA could have gotten there." It's not. So there's that one guy whose DNA ended up underneath the fingernails of a victim, and the difference was that he had they arrested some guy, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, and they charged this guy because his DNA was there and he was drunk. It was to the point where even he thought it was his own DNA, or he thought he may have committed it. Well, anyways, come to find out that the same EMT had that assisted the victim that night also assisted the perpetrator, the suspect, the same night, and there was like a doorknob situation and some other stuff. Well, anyways, none of those things exist with Bryan Kohberger. There's not somebody who he was by himself the entire night, according to himself. He wasn't around any EMTs or the police officers that would show up the next day. He was in a secluded area by himself. According to him, he was in the Walleye Park. And there's no connection there between Bryan Kohberger and these girls, like there is with the victim of that other incident that I told you about, and the suspect, where they had the same paramedic, right? Those things don't exist. Now, Maddie was at the corner club. She was at the grub truck. There was a lot of places that she went. She was picked up by a private driver. Like she met up with a lot of people at the corner club, at the grub truck video, and she hugged them. And I mean, there's a lot of places that she could have gotten DNA from somebody. So I don't know. The only thing that I do know is that if it's not Bryan Kohberger's, it could be anybody's, and it could be there from any other time. If it is Bryan Kohberger's, the fact that it's also on the knife sheath that was brought in by the killer after she came home. So it's, whoever brought in a single source too, that tells you it's a little bit more concrete that way against him than it is that it would be for him. And so if that makes sense. Do you think Kohberger bumped into the girls at WindCo and they brushed him off? I think it's possible. I think it's also possible that he just saw them there and said, all right, that's them. I don't necessarily think that he may have gone up to them at any point and tried to, holler at them and they turned him down. Is it possible that they did? Yeah, 100%. Very much so. But it doesn't have to necessarily be that. It could have necessarily just been him. The fact that he purchased the knife in April means that he wanted to commit this crime against somebody, and he was just looking for the perfect person to do it to. And in his mind, for whatever reason, one of the victims just stood out to him. Daniel, when are the boys going to make an appearance? I miss the good old days. I miss them too. I'm hoping soon. I know we're supposed to be talking about a couple of different things. I'm actually trying to get some more of my friends to come on. I got a buddy named Jonathan. I got a buddy named Hugo that I've been trying to get on to come on as well. These guys have been friends of mine alongside with Jaime and Big Blue for a very long time. I want to say since I was probably between the ages of 8 and 10, I've known these men. And so it's been a very long time. And I think that we all have a great chemistry together. The other two guys are just as funny and witty as myself and Jaime and Blue. And I think you guys would enjoy a conversation that we all have. But they're a little bit camera shy and stuff. So I'll see if I can get them to come on and we'll see what's up. What do you make of DM thinking that KG was playing with her dog? I think she fought with him and probably yelled at him to stop, to get down. I don't know. I don't think that that's the case. So what I think ended up happening is I think the dog may have been panting or something. And we also know that Dylan thinks that Kaylee ran up the stairs with the dog, right? Because she heard somebody run up the stairs and with the dog and say something, someone's here, and then run down the stairs. Now, she thinks it was Kaylee for whatever reason. But we all know, and even the defense agrees, that it wasn't Kaylee because Kaylee had already passed. So Xana was the one that is provable that it was awake at the time and moving. And so I think that the dog and probably the open back door alerted Xana to get out and go check. And she may have heard something that was going on upstairs and said, I think something's happening, and ran downstairs, and Kohberger followed her shortly afterwards. Tim, what's up, Tim? Daniel, I'd like to give your take on whether the vacuum type object may have been an insulated drink container. I never thought about it being that. I honestly thought it's probably if you go to the gas station, right? I mean, not the gas station, to the car wash, and you go to the vacuums, they have this long extended thing, right? And it's helped to get in between the creases of the seats. I think that's what she's referring to. And at night, I think she's referring to the knife. That's my personal thing. Could it have been that one of them fought back with something and hit him and he took the item with him? So, his DNA that may have been on it doesn't get traced back to him. It's possible. Could it have been an insulated drink container? I don't know. I mean, why do you suspect that insulated drink container? Do you think he took something and put it in there? Or do you think he took a drink with him? What are your thoughts, Tim? I'm interested in why you think it may have been that. Jeremiah comes in. I don't see how he can sneak walking the way he does, like Frankenberger or Roberberger. Well, at 4 o'clock in the morning, people are asleep and drunk. That makes people heavy sleepers, especially after a couple hours of sleeping. REM sits in and you're in the knocked out phase. It's going to take quite a bit sometimes to wake people up. And that's the reason why he probably chose that time to go do it. You know what I mean? Hey, what's going on, Sherry? Coming in, becoming the newest member. Are you the same Sherry that emailed me not too long ago? I think you might be. You might be. Trophy. Oh, vacuum insulated. Vacuum insulated. All right. Vacuum tool. It could be. It could be. It could be. I don't know. There's a lot of things that it could be. I strongly suspect it's the K-bar knife. It'll be but we'll be, but that's gonna be something we're really never gonna find out unless he pleads out and talks about it, right? What was in his hand, because I don't think Dylan's ever gonna just say all of a sudden, oh, you know what? My mind got clear. I saw what it was exactly, and it was this. Bryan Kohberger is probably never gonna admit to this. Yeah, I know a lot of people think maybe perhaps he's setting up for a plea deal. I don't know. I don't know anymore. I thought maybe so with this whole like autism stuff, but with the psychopath and all that other stuff that they were trying to throw out, and I think that they're trying to use the autistic diagnosis as an avenue for that, leads me to believe that they're definitely going to fight this tooth and nail, man. But we'll see. We'll see. Steph wants to come on. I got to get you on, Steph. We got to figure out a way to get you on. We'll do a show where we get you on and make sure that you're on. We'll aim for mainly Tuesday or so. Sunday, I'm going to have Jasmine from Forensic Frenzy on the show. We're going to talk about this case and a bunch of the other stuff that has happened here recently. We'll talk about the WindCo and involvement there, possible involvement at the stop and things like that. I'm going to ask her some more questions about the Andrew Garrett discovery. I also want to get her take on what FBI agent or former FBI agent Jen Coffindaffer had told us just the other day, referencing that those Dateline sources that stated that Bryan Kohberger had purchased a K-bar knife and that they had receipts from Amazon and that was dated back in April 2022, had also said that Bryan Kohberger was Papa Rogers. So I want to get her take on it because she really suspected also, Forensic Frenzy, that is Jasmine, that Bryan Kohberger could have been Papa Rogers. I want to get her take on that as well. So we're going to check all that out on Sunday. So we're going to get a break from me on Saturday. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to actually go and see my mom. It's her birthday here in the last couple of days. And so I'm going to go wish my mama a happy birthday, and we're going to go eat and have a good time. And then I'll be back, and I'll be back for Sunday night. Okay, guys? And until then, you guys stay safe. Like, follow, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. And we'll see you guys next time. With that being said, peace out.